Yes, and I will talk about the mobility of today, but also beyond 2033. I also show you and discuss our challenges and also strategies to build a mobility service Freelway. And then finally, I will try to explain why I claim that the countryside is actually the best test bed and first implementation sites for new mobility services. But first, I will talk about how I look at the mobility arena today, and it's more or less like the Wild West in the 17th century, with a lot of new opportunities coming up, and that makes a lot of new actors coming to this arena. New actors working with other business since decades, and for example, car manufacturers and facility management companies are looking into how can they be a part of this mobility arena and services. And I think that in a decade from now, I believe that there will be a lot of new services coming in, as well as new functionality. But I think that the market will consolidate during this time, and there might also be some regulation coming in. And I really hope that when new regulation on this area comes, that they are made in a wise way, not to suffocate innovation within this area. Although all these new techniques, new services and so are coming, I believe that without looking into this aspect, that the most sustainable transport is the one that never takes place, we will not have a better situation in 12, 13 years in the mobility regarding sustainability than we have today. So I think this is a really important issue to take in when you are developing and implementing new services in the mobility area. And to give an example, if you look at the public transport services in Sweden, there is an average of 20–30% fill rate. Actually means that there is 7 to 8 seats not used, traveling around all over Sweden, and to a very high cost, since 50% of that part is subsidized by taxes. And then if you look into the transportation of goods, the situation is similar, where as an average, the fill rate in the trucks in Sweden is lower than 50%. And at the same time, a lot of the parcels within the trucks are filled with air. So maybe they are between 20–30% fill rate in total also there. With that said, would I think that we should stop making transportation and traveling? That is not what I mean. I think instead that there is a huge potential for new innovation to make the already available resources we have more effective. And that is the area where the Freelway service is addressing and working in. And now I will just give you a hunch of the challenges we have when developing this service. That we had the aim to only have one interface to our customers and to the users. And the service should handle both transportation of people, passengers, goods transportation. It should be possible to do customer adaptation also to it. And in some cases, for some customers, the people transportation and goods transportation should be possible to work all together. So if you look at the passenger transportation, it's built to work with public transport companies, also for sharing rides within employees within a company or a village in the countryside. A system for digital call-controlled transportation, and then on-demand shared ride taxi service. And on top of that, the goods transportation and the possibility for the customers to get their own skin logo and specific functionality that they want. And also if our customer would like the service to be public available, or if it's used in a closed group. So how are we able to manage all these functionality and criteria when building it? And we chose to build this one in modules. They are very close integrated, but as such we can now open up specific modules, 1 or 2 or 3, depending on what the customer needs. And then it also makes it much more easily to integrate with partners, with other services. And there might be only one of the modules that is integrated. Yes, and then finally I will talking about the testbeds and where we start to introduce the services, and that is in the countryside. And why do we do that when almost everyone else is introducing it in urban areas? Well, we think that the countryside is really good because you have a geographic small area that you can control. People living there are they know each other most often. They talk a lot to each other. It's easier to get to know the people, and when they start to use the services, we get the really good information back from that. Usually they also are very keen on finding new ways to get a better service in that area, because the public transport and deliveries of parcels and goods are often very poor. So there is a high interest from people living there. Another thing is that you get all the ages. You have middle-aged people, you have young people without cars, you have elderly people living in that area, and all of them are in need of better services. So this is one example up in the mountain area, recreation area, and there in February this year we opened up in a closed community a ride-sharing service we provided. That was the start, and then this summer we opened up together with partners the possibility for tourists to book a transfer out to different hotels and also hiking areas. And what happened then is that the tourism to this train station on the Undersåker, there is about 30,000 arrivals and departures of people during a year. But in the area, it's only about 400 people living. So there's a lot of tourists coming into this area. And we open up this as a digital call-controlled booking transportation. So whenever a tourist is booking a seat, then this transport will take place. Unless none has booked, it will not be any empty seats traveling around. But as soon as a transportation is booked by a tourist, then it will the free seats will be available to the locals in the ride-sharing service for booking as well, but to reduce price. So that instead of having two possibilities with the public transport during the day to travel, during the summer they have about 8. So it's a 400% complementary transportation service in this area, and that is driven by the tourists. And final example is a village, a small village, 200 people living there. It's about 20 kilometers away to the closest city. Whenever they get a parcel delivery, or they do not get parcel deliveries to that village, they have to hop into their own car, drive 40 kilometers back and forth, and then let's say there is 7 people that get a notification that they have parcels to pick up in the city. They will travel altogether 280 kilometers. Instead, now there is a parcel box placed in this village, which is a cooperation with the Black Box company, integrated with the Freelway service. And now people living in that village can just order a transportation to this box. And then a third party driver takes those parcels, pick them up in the city, drives 2 kilometers extra to pick them up, and then he takes them on his other deliveries he has this village every day. So it's instead of 280 kilometers, it's only 2 kilometers that is going to be driven. So that's a good example how sustainability and a better service and savings of cost and environment will all come together. And this service has been in close development with the customer and also the users within the village. Thank you. That was all I had.
Thank you very much, Tobias. Really important topic in today's society, both regarding sustainability awareness and also now with COVID-19. I was curious, do the business models that you apply in the countryside differ from the ones that you apply in the urban areas?
Yes, usually they do. Maybe not in the tourist dense areas, but if it's not the tourist dense areas, then usually the customer can be, for example, a municipality that wants to have a better service in that area, and then then the business model is different from just getting a few percentage for every parcel that is delivered or every drive. Instead, we talk about a similar model like when you invest in infrastructure. So it's more similar to that, to have a decent or even better service in the countryside. It's like investing in infrastructure.
Interesting. We have a question from the audience as well. They're wondering, how are we going to solve the challenge of social distancing during the pandemic regarding share rides?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. So share rides should during the pandemic, I think, be used when actually it gives less. For example, if you have the service within your company, a larger company, several thousand people, instead of letting your employees taking the public transport to and back to your work, to your site, if they are meeting each other during the day at work, there is a less risk of to be sick compared if they would share the ride in the car compared to if they with another employee, as they even share the same room with at work. So that is one way of looking at it. But of course, it is since the pandemic started, the taxi and public transport has at least in the beginning, they lost 75 to 95% of the transportation.
Yeah.
So and there for the Freelway, that part of the service has of course been affected. Instead, we have focused very much on the service for home deliveries of pharmaceuticals and groceries and parcels. That has grown instead.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges. I guess you have to start with one at a time.
Yeah.
Also, we have a lot of tech firm representatives in the audience, and most of them have the urban perspective. So what would you give them as an advice? Like, what can they learn from the countryside use cases that you talk about in your speech?
We are focusing on the urban areas as well, of course, but I mean the test bed is really good and controlled in the countryside. And for example, you can look at it if you have a village, a close community where you run the service, do the tests, you can then look at that part similar to a block within the city where you can adopt this service as well. You might look at different business models, but as a service, technically, I think it's similar to put it into, or it is when we do that.
And what about the city planners in the urban areas? Like in the future, what can they think about or what can they learn from these use cases?
I mean, there are another similarities is this when you get deliveries of parcels, at least in Sweden, that we have this with the village that has 20 k's away to pick them up. But you have a similar thing within many places within the city, that you might get 2 or 3 parcels that you have to pick up. That could be in 2 kilometers in north direction at one company. Another parcel is 5 kilometers in the other direction. There you again have a problem with people need to go out. Maybe if they have the car, they use that to pick it up. If you can combine deliveries to this block, there is a huge win for the city as well.
Super interesting. We'll see what happens in the next couple of years, I guess. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tobias.
Thank you.
And time flies when we're having fun. And this was all for the service design track this year. We have listened to Elena talking about how we can use UX to build strong brands, both now and in the future. And also Tobias talking about mobility in the next couple of years, what to think about and what we can learn from the several projects he's working on right now. So if you would like to join us for the closing keynote, it will be in the other room, so virtual room number 1 in 14 minutes, so at 3:30. So please tune into that in a couple of minutes and join us. I would like to give an extra big thank you to Elena and Tobias for speaking on this track today. And also, of course, a big thank you to everyone in the audience for listening. And I'll see you next year.